So today I'd like to welcome our special guest, Sophie. Is it Personne? Is that how you say it?
Yes, you said it very well there.
Sophie Personne. Okay, that's great. And you are many things, including you are a relationship expert, international speaker, best-selling author, and podcast host.
Yeah.
And today you're going to be telling us about how to achieve great relationships,
Yeah.
I think, which we'll get onto in a bit. But first, maybe if you could just talk me through how you got to be a relationship expert.
Well, that's a bit of a journey and a half, but I think it always is, isn't it?
Yeah.
So originally I'm French, and I came over here to do international relations and politics at Portsmouth University. The aim was actually to do counter-terrorism.
Wow.
Mainly because my grandfather was in the Algerian War and was killed in action.
Wow.
The fact that wasn't necessarily handled so well has some deep effects on my dad and his two sisters.
Mm.
And the prime objective to do that was more to, have more happy my dad and more happy little Sophies running around, because, there was a deep effect. So either way, so that's how it started. And I had a part-time job in security at the ferry port. And I kind of somehow stayed there because to do MI5, GCHQ, that sort of stuff, I needed citizenship. And back in those days, you had to give up your original nationality, which I felt was unfair to my roots. I was happy to be dual, but not giving up one.
Sure.
So, and then we changed it again, but I needed to have, I think it was 10 or 12 years residency before you can apply for the jobs. So I was like, by the time I'm whatever age, I can't be bothered to start again at the bottom and, work my way up.
Yeah.
So I stayed in security, and at the time the idea, because sometimes when you're younger, you feel that you want certain things, but actually they don't suit you at all.
Yeah.
So I worked up my way through the food chain, but the part of the job I enjoyed the most was developing people and teaching them and stuff like that. I didn't understand the word coach at the time. I would have thought it was a bus back in those days. It wasn't a common word, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And we got bought by G4S in 2011, and then I took redundancy because some of you may remember G4S in the Olympics. And believe it or not, that was actually their priority, and it was absolute shambles.
Right.
So there was no way I was going to work for them. Took redundancy, and then spent a bit of time working out what on earth I was going to do with my life.
Yeah.
And we were in the middle of a recession.
Yeah.
So I was looking at my prime qualities and what I'm good at, which was people. Extensive dating experience and throwing a good party. So I set up some events for single people.
Okay.
The quirky stuff, like a night at the museum, murder mystery, that sort of stuff. Like your box standard speed painting. And long story short, as people were attending, I could see why they were single. And unless they date with that, they could be put right in front of Mr. and Mrs. Right, and we would not recognise that person. So I retrained in NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Okay. And I kind of started doing what I'm doing now, niching it to single people, because that was what I was known for. Over time, married people asked me if what I did would work for them, and in that sense, of course it can. Then I had a nervous breakdown, and I started also dealing with people with depression and anxiety. Okay. So it then became actually all-encompassing, because one doesn't go without the other. If you're not happy within yourself, you're not going to be happy in a relationship. Sure. And I think that's why I started writing the first book. Because actually most people can do it. It's only that they need to tweak one small thing. They just don't know how to. Yeah, because, and also, I think, a lot of people, as you say, they're single, and they think that the reason is because they haven't met the perfect person.
and they're on this quest for the perfect person. And when someone comes along who might be perfect for them, they're always sort of looking at faults, or they're always they set the bar so high that they never, they'll never find the perfect person, basically. And even if they do, they might be perfect at first, but once the honeymoon period is sort of worn off, then they might start to sort of realise their faults.
There's a number of things as well. One of the things that I find a lot, if someone is single and they're looking for somebody, they're looking for a checklist of stuff.
Yeah.
And it is quite apparent on dating profiles and stuff, but there's never anything about what they've got to offer to the party.
Yes. Yeah.
And we forget that what we want isn't always what we need.
Sure.
A lot of people, I suppose, once you pass 40 or you've been married once or whatever, you kind of get it a little bit more, although some people don't. But the perfect person, if you speak to people about a relationship in which we've been for a number of years and are happy in, it's not necessarily the kind of person they were looking for.
No.
Often they're actually quite different, because we forget that it's not just about, they've got a good job, they've got this, they've got that.
Yeah.
Have you got the same life vision? It's in the details.
Yes.
In 20 years' time, does one of you want to watch TV all the time and do the gardening? Does one of you want to go and travel the world? Because that ain't going to work.
And also, like, how much time they want to spend together and how much time they want to spend apart. I mean, that's another sort of thing people could argue about. So I have seen obviously these questionnaires that these dating sites send out, and I think, how can this work? How can you really capture the essence of person with these questions? Because a lot of people fake them. I imagine everyone tries to appear better than they are anyway, don't they? So I'm surprised that they get any success with that anyway.
I think it's that. Not all of them have got personality kind of like questionnaires. Some of them is a box standard, what you're looking for, what's your headline, so to speak, and how do you describe yourself. And most people will have a picture that's 5 years old. The choice of words is often quite interesting as well, that they use. And I've found, because I do sometimes review people's profiles.
Oh, okay.
One of the things that's quite frightening is how negative they are from the off. It could be something like, I'm back here again. Okay, it didn't work last time. So what? Don't blame the next person because he hasn't worked yet.
Exactly, yeah. So, and also I think you did make an important point that, yes, it's not, if you're feeling incomplete yourself, then what most people do is they feel, oh, well, if only I had a partner, then I'd feel complete. So they think the solution is out there. So then they try and get this person to make them feel complete, which works for a bit, and then for whatever reason, and then they might start to feel incomplete again, and then they blame the other person and try and change the other person and put more pressure, and then the other person reacts to that, and then that often causes a lot of problems and possibly breakdown. But if they were to originally find another way of feeling complete using other methods or other techniques, then they become the complete person. Then everyone will be trying to date them because they just exude all this sort of completeness and
there's a number of things here. One we touch on later on, but one is this when I get this job, when I get this boyfriend, girlfriend, when I lose weight, and that's called delusion. Because reaching that doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're going to be happy.
No.
The second thing is, looking for someone to come and save you, in essence, isn't going to work either. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that say, oh, let's just put a line in the sand and we move forward. And I genuinely believe that doesn't work. You've got to look back to the past. You've got to face up to your own demons for things that are difficult.
Right.
Otherwise, you won't move forward. You're going to repeat the mistakes all the time. There's lessons that we need to learn. There's things that are not nice, but they have to be dealt with. It's not so much about being complete. It's more about being in full, total self-acceptance. Flaws and all, because our flaws, I'm stubborn, but that makes me resilient. You can turn it, you can reframe it. stubbornness is not always a bad thing. So, but you then have to meet someone with similar flaws to yours, because then you don't see them as flaws so much. The issue is that when people start dating, they pretend to be this wonderful person, and then when people say, oh, they've changed, no, they haven't changed.
Yeah.
It just showed you the good side.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just that actually you're not that compatible, and you better like stop it now.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be better if people were just
I'm
themselves.
generalising a bit here, but
if people were themselves right from the start, on average, we'd end up with much more successful relationships, because you'd know what the other person was like, and they'd know what you'd like right from the start. So, okay, so if you just talk me through, so if someone sort of came to you, what would you say to them? Like initially, what would you?
Well, it depends what they come for. Do you mean a single person?
Well, what do most people come to you for? What sort of people do you work with the most?
I have a variety.
Okay.
So there are some that are single and they just cannot get a relationship at all.
Yeah.
Some people are relationship issues, like in a marriage.
Yeah.
Getting clarity as to whether they want to stay or should stay, and what needs to happen for them to stay. At the moment, I get some COVID anxiety.
Okay.
Because obviously it's affected certain people in certain ways,
Sure.
and because they're overreacting, it's affecting the relationships around them.
Yeah.
I have people who, let me think, just purely, I get a lot of 50 plus.
Okay.
All of a sudden, it's not a midlife crisis, but realise that, okay, I'm at this point here and nothing's really changed in my life.
Yeah.
What do I need to do to make it happen? Because I'm fed up of having the same results all the time.
Yeah.
Most of the people who come to me is because they genuinely want to change something or other, either within themselves or in the relationship that they have. But the common theme is that they've lost themselves along the way.
Yeah.
Because we can very easily, obviously we are us, but over time we evolve through who we eat and what we do and whatever. But we're also a person to a parent, to a child, to a neighbour, to a work colleague, to a friend, to a this, to a that. And through people pleasing, because a lot of people try to do that, we lose our own identity. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been actually in a lot of previous shows, I've talked to people about in our work situation, and that's a common theme in work situations where we give up our authenticity and we try and be because the boss wants us to be a certain way, our co-workers, our clients and customers all want to be a certain way, so we end up being a bit fake and adopting this working persona, and because of that we're never really ourselves, and we always feel a bit sort of insecure, and we don't really experience life sort of fully. So it's much better. And also, if you're trying to sell, if you're trying to develop a personal brand, you're trying to sell stuff, I think if you can be authentic, then people could just relate to that a lot more. They could just smell fakeness. So just in terms of what I'm trying to do with personal brand building and business, is trying to get just people to be themselves and be more authentic. And it's a lot more relaxing as well. It takes a lot more effort, a lot less effort to do that than to try and pretend to be something. And you raised a similar point to do with how we are in relationships as well.
I mean, don't get me wrong, we're all human, right? I try 100% to walk my talk. So if someone said to me, whatever, what would I say to them? Then act that way, sort of thing. Yeah. Obviously, you're not going to say everything about everything to everyone, but I do. I'm probably more open than I should at times. But I find that sharing our own stories helps people to relate, because a lot of the time people think that they're worse off than all of us. Yeah. And I think that we're not always going to please everyone. No. I regularly get lovely criticism mainly about my accent and the slight speech impediment that I have. But really, I shouldn't speak. If you listen to these people, I should never open my mouth again. Right. That's not pleasant, but it's me. And they're clearly not my people. So when you talk about branding, it's attracting people like you, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's why I say you can't please everyone. No. But even if you can just please, X%, then you will do really well. And that's a lot better than trying to please everyone and be all things to all people, because then never please anyone, you know, just be, people ignore you because you're bland and boring. So, okay, so suppose someone was a single person that came to you, how would you work with them?
So first of all, I've got to establish if we're a good fit.
Right. Okay.
That's quite important.
So you do reject some, you say, no, I don't think we're a good fit, I can't. Yeah, that's great, because that's...
and also trying to... I ask a lot of questions to kind of read between the lines. It's only happened twice, but I had two people whose intentions, shall we say, were not pure.
Sure.
One was a married man who supposedly wanted to change. He didn't. He wanted to learn how to manipulate his wife.
Right.
And the other one was a single bloke as well, actually. But he didn't want to change either. He wasn't committed in doing the work, in facing up to anything. So that's never going to work anyway.
Sure, because I imagine a lot of people who are in that situation, the reason they are in that situation is precisely because they don't take responsibility for themselves in the first place. They always think, oh, it's always everyone else's fault, you know, they have to change and everything, and they just can't get the basic thing that you have to really get anything you want in this life. You have to take responsibility for yourself and do what you can to change yourself first. Yeah.
So that's the first step. Then I emphasize how much work there's going to be. So normally I see people, 90% of people are sorted in 3 months. Yeah. And that's just really deep stuff. But most of them, if they really want to change, 3 months is enough. Right. But I emphasize that in between our sessions, because a lot of the work I do is actually outside of the sessions, however weird that sounds. Yeah. There's a lot of homework, so that's a time commitment as well as financial. Okay. And I'll find that just by saying that and say, oh, you know, every 2 weeks you have 2 to 4 hours work to do. Yeah. And you're going to have to look at bits that are not necessarily present, but you've been trying to hide. Yeah. And if they're still up for it, so to speak, and they sound committed and they're really, you know, and there is a good vibe, then yes, that's when we would start.
Okay, that's great. So, so let's say someone comes to you and they go through this process, they're willing to do the extra homework, then what happens next?
So I do a fact-finding session. Okay. Which is basically I want to know everything about their lives, the achievements, the bad things, the good things, the insignificant things that come to their head. Yeah. And from that, I design a program for the next 3 months. So from what they're telling me, but more importantly, what they're not telling me, I can get to the bottom of the issue. Yeah. Because of the way the mind works, if I just hit them with it and say, right, it's that, they might just go, no, it isn't. Yes. So I've got to take their hands and guide them to working that out for themselves. Yeah. So that's where I design the program from this fact finding. Right. And then every 2 weeks we meet up, pretty much where we are now, actually. Yeah. Off we go.
That's that's a brilliant strategy because, as you say, because sometimes people give you the blunt truth. It can be so horrible and so different to the way you normally.
And I will at times as a shock tactic because that can work as well. It depends on the person. You've got depends on the person.
Yes, but especially at the beginning, they might decide to sort of cancel everything and run away because they can't handle the truth. But what you do with your program, you lead them through step by step, so they make their own discoveries and they learn it for themselves. Yeah, which is really a great strategy because I think if I discover something for myself, then I just know it's absolutely true, and it just feels amazing, and also. And then I just take it on fully. But if someone else tells me something, I'm always going to argue about it. I say, no, it's not like that. So people have to learn for themselves, basically. And what you do, you put them in situations, or you give little tips or something to lead them. So then that gives them the moment of discovery.
It's a bit of a cliche, but it's the kind of light bulb moment. If you know what I mean. For instance, a very recent one in the last 3 days, Saturday, I had a guy, and despite some of the stuff we'd done, he was still really seeking external validation. And he was using that as a baseline to grow and how to improve himself. And it sometimes just takes a simple question. I just said to him, but how do you know that they're right?
Yeah.
How do you know that they're not in the wrong? How do you know that their perception of you is right?
Yeah.
And that led to a realization, amongst other things, of, oh, actually, why do I listen to these people?
Well, that's the value of working with someone else who's outside your situation, because we've all got these limiting beliefs.
Exactly.
We have to sort of survive and to make sense of all this massive data and experience and everything. So we have these beliefs that structure our world and our experience, and sometimes they're good, but sometimes they limit us. But then just conversations with someone else, like you, for example, and then you just put in a little thing like that, and they realize, yeah, that belief that, you know, other people are always right and can always validate me, they realize what a stupid belief it is. But
and there's other things, you know, there's things in the past that are stopping us, because it's all very well having the memory of something that wasn't particularly nice. You don't need to drag the ball and chain of negative things and emotions that are associated with that event. So the beauty of NLP is that you can do hypnosis, and you can do certain techniques that, for instance, would remove that.
Yes, so this is where they have some sort of maybe trauma in the past, and they associate the emotional pain with a certain situation. So every time they have that situation in the future, that brings the same thing, so that they might try and avoid that situation.
And most of the time it's unconscious, of course.
It's all done subconsciously, yeah. So they're not even aware they're doing it. They just avoid certain situations without you know, without even thinking about it. I've done some NLP. I've done a master practitioner training in NLP myself, and I do find it very useful. And a few of the other people on the show actually are NLP practitioners. So, but it's interesting to see it applied in this way. So what you do is you go back into the past and you sort of re-experience it, but you experience it in a certain way, so it doesn't add to the trauma, but it allows them to become more conscious of it. Is that correct?
Yes, and I also then bring them back to the future to literally say goodbye to that event. So that, I mean, they've all said afterwards, you know, the relief. And it's an interesting thing. I mean, you understand, but sometimes when we do various things with submodalities and doing anchors, and when people start describing something that's completely out there, and they think to themselves, how is that ever going to work? I remember I had a young chap who was 17, and he'd been suffering with anxiety from a child. And because he was so nervous, I did the first few sessions with him and his mum. So just so that she was there to comfort him if need be. And she couldn't believe it, because he was coming out with random stuff, and she was like, what am I paying this person for? Why is this? But then it was working, and she was literally, she had a chat with me one day saying, I don't get this. How is that working? It's just weird. And you cannot explain it very well to people unless they've experienced it once.
Oh, that's great. So you hypnotize people as well as part of your thing?
It's not obviously hypnotherapy in any way, shape or form. It's more of that rapport that you have and getting them to talk as if they were falling asleep. And I think
so it's a very sort of light sort of conversational hypnosis thing, but it's just a way of accessing a bit more stuff that's underneath the surface. Because
some people are scared of it, some people don't respond well, so I just use various other things that they don't realize that's what it is, basically.
No, I mean, I think hypnosis is great. I think it's you know, sometimes I listen to these things off Spotify and YouTube and stuff like that, and I find I really go into sort of a deep state and accept these positive affirmations or stuff like that, or whatever it is. So I'm surprised more people don't do that sort of thing.
A lot of people are scared.
Well, it can be. Well, you always think the hypnotist is trying to plant some post-hypnotic.
It's the show that are on, you know, when people turn into a chicken and stuff. And I try to explain to them every time, you know, it's pre-framed. They do pick people who are more susceptible. I never get picked for anything, even if I went to a magician show or whatever, because I'm too strong-willed. I don't relax well. So I give that vibe, don't touch her. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Well, it does, I think to be hypnotized, it does require a lot of trust, doesn't it? Because you have to become vulnerable in a certain way. But obviously,
all hypnosis is self-hypnosis.
It is self-hypnosis.
Realise.
That's right. It is actually totally safe, because you are sort of conscious
control
all the time, and if they did start to say, sort of try and manipulate you in a certain way, you would be able to just come out of the trance just
exactly
like that.
that.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. So that's interesting. So I'm interested in what sort of homework you give them.
Oh, it depends. It can be watching stuff. It can be extremely deep questions. Depending on the person, it is, the subject varies, sort of thing. It can be around rejection. It can be around judgment. It can be around a lot around expectations, assumptions. And then, that's where a lot of my work comes in. It's what words I use, how I formulate these questions, how I put them in a certain order, how I just interrupt with something that's got nothing to do with price of cheese and go back to something else, and that sort of stuff. And as someone said, I suppose I'm someone who's always enjoyed philosophy and big concepts and stuff. But I'm not very alone in that, but not a lot of people do that on a day-to-day basis. Right. And as someone said, start every day, but you ask yourself that sort of stuff. So for some people, it's quite a revelation.
Sure. So, and so it sounds like, it requires a lot of, so you're not just applying some formula you got off the internet and saying like do this, that. So you work it out for each person.
Yeah.
And so it requires a lot of skill to do that, doesn't it? So how did you, so I can understand, so how did you start sort of realizing what sort of things to ask at a particular point?
I think there was a number of things. So if we go back to being a manager, back in the day in security, I think without knowing what I was doing, I was already kind of doing it, in the sense of I figured out if you've got a happy team, especially at home, the head is on the job when they come to work. Yeah. So there's less mistakes, less disciplinaries, less sacking people, less re-employing someone who doesn't then, because you know what it's like. You bring someone in a team, it takes 6 months before they all readjust. Yes. So to make my life easier, and also probably because I was one of the only women in a world of men, naturally it happened. And then it's over time, because, for instance, I've never been married, but I have dealt with so many married people that I do understand the issues that arise in a marriage, because you've got to learn, yes, you've got to learn from yourself, but also from others. Everything is an experience. And then in terms of what I do now, obviously I did do the courses and all the trainings and whatever and practices, but then you've got to make it your own, because it's all very well, learning it, but how do you apply it so that it works for you? And I think, even now I'd still change things. I found something the other day that I thought, actually, I'm going to use that on everyone, because that is relevant to everyone. So it's obviously there's the technical, professional kind of learning, and then it's questioning and challenging your own self as to, okay, how can I make it even better? How can I improve what I'm doing, as opposed to being in your own rut of like, well, I know what I'm doing, I just carry on. Sure. And so how is it different? So we've talked about if there's like a single person came to you, but how about if like a married person came to you, had problems in their marriage? So I have done married people where the partner didn't want to come along, and that's fine. So is that normally better then, to have both of them together? I never do them together. If they come together with issues, I will never, ever do them together. Because what I found is that they're just bringing the argument we're having at home, and they're seeking me to agree with one or other. Right. That gets no one nowhere. So where you get two people that come to you, so you get version A of a story, you get version B of a story. So you know that in the middle is the truth. You know with this one could have done something a bit differently, this one a bit better. And then you can manipulate them better. Yeah. And at the end of the day, relationships is, when I say manipulate, I don't mean it in a evil way, but make them do certain things that are actually going to bring them closer. Yes. So it's much easier to have two different people who can generally say what they want to say. Because the issue when they're both in the room with a third person is that one person says something, this one's not even listening to what he just said or she just said, because we're preparing the next argument.
Sure?
So you get nowhere. No one's listening to no one, and it doesn't work.
Well, so you have tried. You have tried that?
No, I never tried, because that's what counselling is for. I'm not a counsellor, and everybody I know who's gone to relate are split up. So I thought, how do I do this differently?
Okay.
So I've never ever done two people together. From the word go, I was completely against it, because we've all got our own stories, our own hang-ups, and sometimes there are things from the past that they may have forgotten about, but that they wouldn't feel comfortable to talk about in a relationship that's not very secure or stable at the moment.
Sure.
So you've got to address each person's issue, and they're not necessarily relevant to the other one.
Sure.
The outcome is, but not that.
So, I mean, sometimes I imagine, that they build a much stronger marriage and they sort of live happily ever after, sort of thing. Yeah. But sometimes I imagine they decide that the best thing they should do is to actually split up. Is that right?
Yeah, that does happen. And to be honest with you, I find it really courageous. Yeah. Because it is much better to accept there's a problem. Yeah. And that you can't sort it, because how long's a piece of string? I know someone who's been working at his marriage for 8 years.
Wow.
Turning up every day and waking up next to a person is not what I call working at your marriage.
Sure.
But because we're too scared to, upset the apple cart, nothing happens. And that's not fair on either of them.
No.
I have a lady recently, that's what she came to me, it was clarity around the marriage. Yeah. And she had left her husband 3 years prior, decided to take him back, and she was back there, sort of thing. Yeah. And she decided to leave him. And to be honest with you, she's done him a favour as well.
Right.
Even more so than she herself, if that makes sense, because he wasn't happy either.
Sure. Yeah.
I think we've got to accept that, yes, I mean, if I ever got married, yes, I do want it to be forever. Yeah. You don't get married, because you want to divorce in 2 years' time. That's not how it works. Yeah. I think that there should be better selection of a spouse in the first place, because I find that a lot of people kind of fall into marriage as opposed to generally wanting it for the right reasons. But I just think that, life is a journey, and being a martyr through it doesn't help anyone.
Sure.
So I mean, yes, some marriages rework, and because both people are committed and there's enough there, they've got the same life vision, they're prepared to work at it. Yeah. But there's only a point, if it comes to see you too late, so to speak. Yeah. It is sometimes too late, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the one of the hardest decisions, I suppose, is whether to marry this particular person, because it's something that would really dramatically affect, if not the whole of the rest of your life, a significant part of it, and to dissolve that relationship is going to be incredibly painful and expensive, and especially if kids are involved in something like that. So it's a massive decision. So as you say, you have to choose wisely. But it's not always easy, is it?
Having said that, I had one particular person who, her decision became, I want to leave marriage. Yes. But because she's kind of stood up on her own 2 feet and became more true to herself, as opposed to trying to please all the time, they did split up for 3 months. Right. But they're now back together stronger than ever. Yeah.
And sometimes, that's probably could be a very good result, isn't it? Yeah. But by going through that process, they realise their own sort of independence and strength and so on, and then they can also start to appreciate the things that they liked about the other person in the first place, and the other person can, has this similar experience, and then they sort of then they realise that maybe dating other people, it's not the same. There's a lot of things, superficially, that these new people have a lot better, but then they miss the connection they had with the original person. Yeah. There must be fascinating working with all these people.
It is. Yeah. There's also the dark side of it, where you sometimes have to deal with people who've been through rape or sexual abuse, that sort of stuff.
Yes.
Which is not easy, or they've had other kind of traumas, but it's knowing that they're going to be free from it at the end of it that matters.
Yeah, because one of your work is to sort of become more conscious, or to try and relive it in a way that releases it and allows them to let go of it.
Yeah.
So it's quite a beautiful thing, you know, to be able to help people in that way. Yeah,
definitely.
So yeah, so, and you also mentioned COVID anxiety. So this is where people, well, they're just very scared of getting COVID. Is that?
Yeah, so, you know, don't want to go out, for instance. Struggle with family members who don't feel the same way and who go out. Then you've got a single person who's got COVID anxiety, who doesn't want to go out, and is kind of safe, alienates themselves from everybody else because we're so scared about them just stay indoors. And then don't see anybody. And then feels even more lonely and therefore even more anxious.
Yeah, so that feeds into the whole being single thing, or maybe having some social anxiety in the first place. But the whole COVID thing, that adds a whole new layer to it, because it's so and they might use that to justify their feelings of just sort of social awkwardness or meeting people. Because they might not want to admit that, but then they say, oh well, I might get COVID, then it's sort of more social.
And the thing as well with anxiety and all these things, as you will know, they're only a symptom. You know, I was talking to someone just before this, who, funny enough, about anxiety with COVID, and I said to her, you know, you've seen COVID as a problem. It isn't. It's a symptom of something bigger. I said, I've got a headache. Why have I got a headache? Sorry to bore you with my personal life, but because I've been washing and cleaning the walls and the ceilings in my lounge, ready for decorators tomorrow. I've also been getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning because I've given myself stupid deadlines. Blah, blah, blah. That's why I've got a headache. You know, it's a symptom of loads of things and something deeper, which is someone really said I didn't organise myself. But actually, I found that more, I wanted to do all of these things, so I decided to push myself for 2 weeks. COVID is the same thing. COVID is the headache. It just highlights a fear of contact, a fear of germs, potential OCD, fear of dying. That's what needs to be sorted, is the fear of dying, not COVID.
And I mean, it's one thing to just sort of be objective and to take rational decisions about how much risk you want to expose yourself to, but it's quite easy for people to get a bit paranoid and to just go, you know, to the extreme.
The other issue is control.
But I think things are, aren't people a bit less scared about COVID now? Aren't the sort of risks receding a bit now?
It depends who you talk to. I think the issue is control. A lot of people want to control their environment. They want to control the outcome a lot of the time. And I mean, I had a few things happen to me 3 years ago where I genuinely questioned control, free will, even, as to, you know, do we actually have free will? And I did quite a lot of research on it, and the conclusion was that yes and no, because both arguments ended up back to the same point, contradicting one another. I think we have a perception of control in certain ways, and for instance, not going out and detouring the house is a form of control, but what's behind that?
I think it definitely makes sense to just sort of delve a bit deeper and to just see what our underlying motivation is, become as conscious as possible as what's going on in our decision making, because quite often we end up doing things out of habit, or we don't really even know why we're doing stuff. We just sort of do it, and then we also can get these sort of beliefs as well that sort of fit in with that as well to justify behavior. And most people just really limit themselves by that, and they're actually sabotaging themselves, and they're preventing themselves from, you know, reaching true happiness and satisfaction.
One of the things I also found is that fear, and that's not always fear of failing, but fear of success. Because we forget that being successful in whatever it is you want to achieve, even being a relationship, has consequences. You know, if you're a single person who's been single for a long time and you're really dying to meet someone, and then you meet that person, well, your life is going to completely change. You know, once we move in, you don't have a say as much as you used to about what colour is going to go on the wall, or you know, what you're going to get. Same for little things, what you're going to have for dinner. And I think people sometimes forget the attention to detail, because it is often details that we split people up. It's that the fact they didn't put the cup back there that just like gonna do it, you know? Attention to detail is really important. It's not always just about the bigger picture.
That's right, yeah, because you got to be, you might think you want something, but you might not realize that once you actually get it, all these other things go along with it. So you either have to say yes to the whole package, or obviously try and make the best of it once you're in and try and compromise and get things working so you're both happy. But at the end of the day, you've got to appreciate that you'll have to give up some things at the same time.
It's about awareness. If you're ready, then it's much easier to accept.
Sure. Okay, so let's talk about, suppose someone that comes to you that's anxious. What would you do? How would you work?
First of all, is what kind of anxiety?
Okay.
Because there's loads of different kinds of anxieties.
Okay.
There's also, sorry to be controversial, but there's some people who come with what they feel is anxiety, but really isn't. It's more that it's been put onto them that they must be anxious, and actually they're not. They're just not assertive enough to say what they want and how they want it. Right. So it really is a case-by-case scenario of reading in between the lines. I had someone who came to me years ago for depression.
Yes.
And the upshot of it, she was not depressed.
Right.
She was not depressed at all. She'd been seeing a married man for 10 years. Right. And she wanted the married man to leave his wife.
Right.
Everything wasn't happening. And the depression was actually the fact she felt out of control in her life. And she wasn't having the one thing that she wanted.
Yeah.
Once we explored that and why she was putting herself in a position where, you know, there was obviously commitment lacking for her. But sometimes when we go for something like that, you know, like someone who's not available, it's also because of fear of success, like what we were just saying. Yeah. And with her, she took 6 months, but we got to a point where actually she realised that it wasn't for her, and she left the guy, and in time has met someone who's perfectly suited to her. And she's not depressed, you know, and she realised that it wasn't depression. Antidepressants weren't working because they were, again, just touching a symptom of something that was completely different.
Yeah. So because people often are not really aware of what's going on. Although they think something's the cause, but actually it's a symptom. And that's why working with someone new, they can find out the actual cause, just see things more clearly, and that enables them to fix the thing that's causing all the problems, which makes a lot of sense. Do you ever work with groups of people, or is it just one-to-one?
I have done some workshops and stuff. And did I enjoy it? If I'm totally honest with you, I'm not sure it was 100%, because I really revisit it to a degree, but it's not, you can't spend enough time with the one person that really needs it, because in a room there's always 1 or 2 people that need it more than everybody else. And it's often the ones that shine quiet as opposed to the more extroverts. I mean, I have a couple of online programs. I'm working on something that is going to be more membership based, where it would be live Q&A and stuff. As to doing proper workshops again, if I'm honest with you, with the amount of energy that goes into organising something, renting the venues, the marketing associated with it, and all the rest of it, so much effort for not a lot. I find that I can get a lot more out there online than I can in a face-to-face kind of environment, which actually really suits at the moment. So rather than doing physical group sessions, but you are doing online group sessions, are you? I haven't yet. It's something that's on the... But again, how do you... Because every time I look at it, I've looked at it a number of times, and I'm like, okay, let's just say we do one for anxiety. Let's just say we do one for single people. But even if you only had 6 people, they're all going to have something different. And if one needs a timeline to go back in time and remove a trauma, how can I do that in front of the other 5? I can't. So then they need the one-to-one, really, more than they need the group thing. So it becomes, and every time I've looked at it, I've been Yeah. Well, okay, again, and I've put it back because I can't see at the moment. Because when I do something, I really give it 100%. If people pay, they've got to get a result. And at the moment, I can't think of a way of how they'd get they'd get something, but not 100% of a result, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand. Yes, obviously you don't want to do something like that if you feel they can't get what you really have to offer that would really help them, which would really need one-to-one work to do that. Unless you do like an introductory thing.
So I've got that. I've got 2 online programs which are very general. One is for single people and one is around change. And both like talk about various things that people don't really know about. There's exercises that are general and would work for anyone. And that's kind of the introduction, I suppose, because then if there was things that identified needed sorting out because they've been made aware that there's a problem they didn't realise, then they can approach me if they so wish. But the group coaching I find difficult.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's go. I'll just share my screen and we'll have a look at your website and your book and all that. Hang on. So there you can see. So this is your website.
Yeah.
And did you say, have you also got a podcast?
I do, yeah.
Because you don't link to that from your site, do you?
So if you're going free resources at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in there you've got.
Oh, there you've got it there. Yeah.
Okay. Sorts.
Webinars. Oh, Sophie. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Oh, July 16th. Oh, when you interview different people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
I just find because you know, some of them have their own experiences. Some of them, like for instance, introvert, extroverts, the one that you just went past.
Yeah.
You know, that was both from a personal experience, and that's what the lady now does. But some of them are actually just. I interviewed 2 guys from Jerusalem, and it was about ancient wisdom and relationships, and it's just a different angle of looking at it. And I find. If I want to wobble on, I'll do a video. But for a podcast, I think it's better when you can exchange with somebody, a bit like what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Because it triggers more subject, more conversation, more questions.
Okay. So you don't do like, so what I do is I record it on, so we're talking on Zoom, and then I record it and then I have it stream live to Facebook and YouTube, then I post it on LinkedIn, sometimes I post it on Twitter as well, and I extract the audio and I upload that to my podcast. So it goes on to 5 or 6 different places, but you don't you don't put these on YouTube as well, these ones?
So these are on YouTube, they're on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify.
Oh, they are, okay.
You know, all the normal podcast things that people listen to, sort of thing.
That's great. And you so your book, I found your book, Your Other Half.
Yeah.
Did you say you said your first book? Are you doing another one, or have you done?
I'm writing it as we speak.
Okay. I mean, that's great to get 98 ratings, 4.5 stars. That is pretty good, isn't it? So let's have a look. So I like the image.
Thank you.
There's an elephant and what's that? Monkey?
No, yeah, what is it? We don't know, do we? There's a lot of subliminal things in that image. First of all, you've got, in a relationship, you've often got someone who is more dominant than the other person.
In this case, it's the elephant.
Yeah. Inside of you, you also have a more dominant part.
Right.
Then we've got the very obvious elephant in the room.
Yes.
And if you look at the cover, how they're looking out to sea, they're not holding hands or paws or whatever, but they're together. You can see that the clouds are starting to break and the birds are flying. So it's a feeling of hope. And yes, it is dark, but it will open up, sort of thing. So there's all sorts of things in that image, really.
Oh, okay.
I'm just trying to find if I can share my screen in a minute to just show you the new.
Okay, well, look, we've only got about 5 or 6 minutes left. So do you want to share your screen now?
Bear with me because I don't know where the image is.
Okay, well, you find them there. Tell me when you found them, and I'll activate you. I think I have to make you co-host, don't I?
It is on Facebook, so I will find it on Facebook.
Okay.
But the second one is it's called Breaking Free: The Guide to Real Change and Happiness.
So when's that coming out?
September, hopefully.
Okay.
So bear with me. The problem is sometimes with Zoom, the internet can be quite slow.
Yes.
And actually, when you see the image, we realise that there's some similarities with the first one.
Okay.
Right, let me. So, can I share my screen?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, try it. See what happens. I've just noticed this is 94 in romantic relationships, which is pretty. That is pretty high, actually. That is very.
There you go.
There we go. Yes. Oh, there it is. It's the same couple, but this time they're on a boat sailing away to sunset together.
And it's a journey, and we're going towards the sunset, the sunrise. Some people see it differently.
Yeah.
Towards calmer waters.
Okay. Yeah. And there's a little boat there in the distance, isn't there? I don't know if that's who's in that boat. I mean, or
exactly
what that represents.
Is it a hurdle or is it a welcome sight?
Okay. I don't know. So that looks great. So look, you've got about 5 minutes left. So just you can just start talking, share screen, whatever. Just can you give us like a message, like your 5-minute tips to what we should be doing in our lives to create better relationships or so on, or anything else?
I think that to get better relationship, first of all, you need to understand that you need to look at yourself first. You're responsible for the state of your relationships. Yeah. There's a lot of things that are out of our control, and if they're out of our control, then we can't do anything about them. So what can you do to make it better for yourself? Yeah. The first thing is to make a decision. And sometimes that's simple as making the decision, but you're going to do something about it.
Yeah.
Then comes the fear of making the wrong decisions for most people. So how do you go about that? Well, gut instinct is normally the best way. Obviously, you don't want to listen to paranoia as opposed to gut instinct, and people don't always know how to do that because it's not something they're familiar with. And I think one of the easiest way I've found, and it works every single time, if you are hesitating about something, and if you ask a question that the answer is yes or no, and you do heads or tails, heads is yes, tails is no. You flip the coin and you will know the way it lands, whether you're happy about that or not, because your heart will sink if it's not the yes or the no you wanted. And that's the easiest way to trust your gut when you're unsure about something.
Yeah.
And then I think it's about acceptance and self-talk. You know, we literally abuse ourselves sometimes and beat ourselves up because we haven't achieved this or we haven't got that yet. And once you are in acceptance of your own flaws, of what's happened in your past, of what you might have done right, and also what you've done wrong, you know, straight away you're empowered. You're not ashamed. You become yourself truly, because anxiety often comes when we're trying to hide something.
Yeah.
So I think, it's about making the decision to do something about it. And if it is to just read a book to find out more about yourself and what's happened in the past, because the key is to understand yourself. Once you understand yourself, you can start to understand others.
Sure. Yeah, because people, and also people are very wrapped up in, you know, what do other people think of me all the time, and they think, and they forget that other people are wrapped up in what we think about them. So, and once you realise that, it gives you a lot more confidence to just be who you are, and because you realise other people don't really care because they're all wrapped up in their own little worlds.
The problem is that there's a lot of things that we deep down know, but that we don't believe necessarily, or that, you know, we know that for instance, what you just said, we all know that.
Yeah.
But if we don't believe it inside, you know,
that's right.
We've got to do, and I think we've all got some form of inner work to do at some point or another in life. Life is a cycle, you know. It's the law of physics. If a wheel goes down on a car, it will go back up. That's just physics. What goes down goes back up. And it's the same for us. You know, yes, things will happen. We won't be happy. Just in the last 4 months, I found my dad dead. Then another friend has died suddenly 2 weeks ago. You know, it's not present, but it is part of life. And as long as you accept that, instead of becoming a victim, saying, oh, it always happens to me, and, oh, you know, process the grief and deal with it, but bounce back up.
Definitely. And I think, Dave, we've been on an hour now, and I think that's the appropriate words to sort of end the show with, bounce back up. So thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been lovely having you on.
Thank you for having me.
And I've learnt a lot. So, and I hope our viewers and listeners have as well. So that's great. So, so bye for now, and best of luck with everything.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Bye.